Hello and welcome to Women in Power podcast, where me and Dagmara are learning perspectives of women in our community who are shaping the world around us. So we are learning opinions, perspectives, and the advice that they would like to share with the generation ahead. Today we have with us Rusha Al-Rawaf, and she is an expert and an advisor in communication and strategy. Thank you so much for being here today with us, Rusha. And we're going to talk about the incredible transformation happening right now in Saudi Arabia through the lens of a person who's spent years in corporate communication, and we'll be asking some very interesting questions, looking into the cultural differences within Saudi Arabia and learning more about her incredible journey here. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you both. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So should we dive into your journey and how you started your career and what pushed you into corporate communication?
Well, it's a very long time ago. So I've got over 20 years of experience of working here in Saudi Arabia with multinationals in different industries. And one of the things that I've observed, of course, is the transition that has been happening in Saudi Arabia over the years. But starting off a long time ago, like I said, it started off with being curious and inquisitive and wanting to be a part of the ecosystem and being a contributing member of society. But during the journey, that, of course, has changed depending on what was going on. And I find myself here now having worked with international brands, multinational companies, and helping them build trust, narrate their story of their different entities and the different brands that they have, building relationships with their different stakeholders, and then helping them, of course, with that grow.
So since there is quite an audience listening to us interested in what's happening in Saudi Arabia and actually considering this as a potential market that they'd want to enter, and you've seen a lot of these stories in your career, what are the most common mistakes that they make that you would really watch out for?
I would say that they're more of opportunities. One of the things that when, for example, a brand or a company wants to go into a new market, one of the things that they think that they can do is generalize, thinking this is just another market. But I think one of the opportunities that they can have when they come to the Saudi market is understand the nuance and the context. Of course, this is not unique to Saudi Arabia. Whenever you expand to any country, and there's a lot of international examples of very successful brands that started and were very powerful in their home markets, but then when they expanded internationally to whatever country it is, they had some pitfalls and they had to regroup and come back. And this is the same thing with the Saudi market. I think one of the things that they need to understand is start off with being curious. So one of the things that you need to do when you come to Saudi Arabia is understand the local market, understand the culture, understand the differences. And then once you're curious, what that is going to lead to is understanding that trust is a very, very important token to be successful in Saudi Arabia. And how do you build trust? You build trust with building relationships, by being authentic, by being consistent, and walking the talk. So it's not just about saying about all of the amazing things that you're going to do, but then actually following through and doing it. And it will require time because we are a culture of trust and relationships. And so they need to understand who they need to be talking to, what they need to be saying, what's in it for them. That takes us, of course, to Stephen Covey's win-win situation. So understanding the context, the nuance, what's different about the Saudi market. I think it's easy for someone to generalize, for example, the region, thinking, there's a lot of similarities, the language, the backgrounds, the culture. From the outside, it does look very much similar to each other. But and that's a human nature for us to do that, to generalize. But I think what one needs to do is understand the nuances of every different market. There's a lot of similarities between Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Emirates, Oman, but then operating in every market, there's going to be nuances and differences. So that curiosity, that building the trust, understanding the context coming in, I think it's very important for anyone coming into the market to spend some time doing that.
And I think that's a really good piece of advice, because curiosity is going to ultimately lead you to the right conclusions, whether, you come to Riyadh, whether you come to Jeddah, whether you come to, Kuwait or some other market. So it's really something that will help you to think more proactively about, what is really influencing the decisions or the behaviors of the people that you're talking to. And so you're not making assumptions. I love that as a piece of advice. Yeah.
Exactly. And you reminded me of something else, that even within Saudi Arabia, there are differences. So for example, working in the East Coast, working in the Central region, working in the West Coast, you're going to have very different nuances. If I want to simplify it, let's say, for example, time that work starts. For example, in the Eastern province, it would be 8 a.m. In the Central region, it would be 9 a.m. In the West Coast, it would be 10 a.m. So things like that, of even when you open your business and which region you're going to be opening it in, what time do you want your employees to come and start? So that's where the curiosity comes in, and you have to understand the different contexts of where you're operating.
Just thinking about Saudi Arabia in the past couple of years, right? It changed a lot. But I think stereotypes and perception in the West is a bit sticky, and it doesn't change that quickly as Saudi Arabia did. So what are the main mistakes that people do here, and what would you advise people not to do, for example?
So that's a really great question. So one of the things that I would say is this misconception that when people coming here is that they want to teach, and they underestimate probably sometimes because of the sticky perceptions that they have about the region. But the thing is, it is a very sophisticated ecosystem here. The Saudis are very sophisticated, very diverse as well. So one of the things I think is that we want to tell our own stories, and we have a lot of great and amazing stories to tell. So don't come with the perception that I'm going to teach them, or yes, international expertise is amazing. And this is a global thing, anywhere, whether you go to the West or to the East, we can all learn from each other. And we've had experiences such as the recent pandemic, where we all learn from each other. And this is the same thing. So yes, international expertise is appreciated and is very beneficial, but don't underestimate the complexity and the sophistication of the local capabilities that are here. We have stories to tell, and we are able to tell them. And let's just work together on this. I think that would be a piece of advice.
So basically, like, we're welcoming the expertise, but we also
have expertise of ourselves. We have a lot to teach as well.
Yeah.
Going from, if we go back to our culture about hospitality, we are, in our opinions, of course, we're a little bit biased about that, but I think that it's a very grounded bias. That we are, because of our desert background, we are the owners of hospitality, because without hospitality, people die.
Yeah.
So in the desert, if you're not hospitable to any wanderer that comes by, that could be the life or death situation of that wanderer or that nomad. So it is very much engraved in our DNA, as an example.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that really helps to sort of understand better the attitude that people need to have coming to Saudi. One question related to also what's happening here in the country is that there is now, so we've obviously all heard of Vision 2030, and now we're coming closer and closer to that, deadline, let's say. And what's happening now is that the government is really kind of reshaping a lot of things, and in this last stretch, like they're sort of reprioritizing certain projects. They're sort of reviewing everything that's been done until now. And it seems to me like there is more and more emphasis put on the SMEs, on the private market, on the private sector, to really push people into, creating their own businesses, seizing that opportunity, which is really the explosive growth in Saudi. What's your take on that? Is that something that you can also kind of, is it relatable? Have you also observed this over the last few years?
Very much so. So as you mentioned, Vision 2030, we're all from the local community, we're very familiar with it. But just in case for, if we've got anyone from international, Vision 2030 had a lot of objectives. One of the objectives was improving quality of life. As a Saudi myself, always loved living here, but I can see the significant growth in quality or improvement in quality of life that Vision 2030 has brought to Saudi Arabia. But another main objective of Vision 2030 was diversification. So diversifying the GDP resources, income resources, diversifying away from the traditional and conventional GDP resources that the kingdom depended on in the past before Vision 2030 materialized. But one of those wasn't just diversifying away from the resources, but it was also about the ecosystems. So in the past, there was a very high reliance on government interventions and government employment. But another thing that the kingdom is focusing on is not just, the GDP for the kingdom, but also for the individuals. So there is a lot of focus on small and medium enterprises, the mom and pop shops, the ecosystem to help in, that growth and that ecosystem mature and flourish. So we'll see that there are government interventions for that. There are startup incubators. But the wonderful thing is that innate drive also exists in Saudis. So you'll find a lot of Saudis and, internationals coming here, that the environment is very convenient and very welcoming of the entrepreneurial DNA to happen. And we have a huge success legacy and story of companies like that coming to Saudi Arabia or starting in Saudi Arabia, unicorns that have started in Saudi Arabia, fintech, fashion, tourism, culture, art that is happening in Saudi Arabia. So I think that the vision not only was working on Saudi, but part of its mission was the small and medium enterprises.
Wonderful. And going back on your expertise in corporate communication, what do you think those unicorns, those startups, those companies did right in the Saudi market, regardless whether they came here or they started as a Saudi homegrown company? What do you think, in your opinion, they did great that really elevated them?
I think one of the things is building trust. So not only building trust with their partners and the ecosystem, but it's also with their consumers, assuming that they're a consumer brand, being consistent with their narrative and being authentic. So those three things I think are very important from a brand or a startup perspective. You need to be consistent with your communications, tell an authentic story, nothing that is fake or made up, and be consistent with it with time, and you build the trust. So I think those are the three areas that the successful companies have done. And we have a lot of examples of great homegrown startups that have blossomed in the region because of that.
And conversely, Rusha, how long will it take for someone to realize that they've made a corporate communication mistake before it blows on X?
Could be a second. So I think that this is similar to any international market. And we've seen it, for example, with recent global events. Different platforms, but mainly, for example, on X, on TikTok, on social media in general. But you never know what a difference of a word. Of course, if you've got an experienced comms team and advisors, you will be able to know that. But I think that a single word can have a huge impact and a huge difference. And you might say something wrong, and then the social media powers that be don't pick up on it, and it doesn't become viral. Or if it does become viral, and that's a positive, because going viral can be both a positive or a negative thing. Mm-hmm. But I think continuously being authentic, and if you've built trust, then you have social capital. Mm-hmm. So even if you do make a mistake, the audience could be willing to forgive you, but what you need to do is own up to it, mm-hmm. be forthcoming, and be honest with your audience about it.
So your advice is to communicate, but make sure that communication is in line with the culture,
yes.
with the standards of communication,
yes,
with an understanding of all those nuances that are happening here within the kingdom right now.
Agreed. So this goes back to the curiosity and then the context. So understanding what are the cultural contexts, the nuances of the region, and what are the differences a word could make. But I think with social media and with communication, it's a balance. If you do a lot of it, you're bound to have mistakes. It's a game of ratios, obviously. Of course, with the great understanding, that percentage is going to decrease, but it's bound to happen. It always happens, and we've seen global brands with amazing communication and brand and PR teams that still have made mistakes. But it's about the recovery and how do you come back from that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't speak enough and you don't communicate enough, then you risk not being visible, of not reaching your audiences. So you have to have that balance and awareness.
And if we were to characterize the Saudi, population, so we're dealing with a relatively young society, actually, right? So I think 50% of the Saudi population is below 30.
Correct.
At the moment. So that really shows as well how to communicate a little bit. And then the other thing is this assumption that people have coming to Saudi that everybody speaks English, right? So obviously that's something to take into account as well. So whenever you're running the communication for your company, it's Arabic first.
Exactly.
I'd assume.
Yeah.
And what other things are characteristic to Saudi that, you wouldn't see elsewhere, or that you definitely need to have as a, pillar of your communication strategy?
Sure. So going back to your age comment, yes. I'm not sure about what the latest statistics are, but last time I checked, I think it was about 60 or 65% are under the age of 35. So you have a very tech savvy and tech native population, which is a plus, because that means that you can reach them via the mobile phone that you have. The penetration percentage is very high here in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of people use social media on a daily basis in all age groups. So from the young all the way to the more experienced members of the community. So that's an advantage that you need to take into mind and know how you're communicating with them. In regards to the Arabic, I agree. Arabic is very important, but it's not a simple, writing from left to right in English versus from right to left in Arabic. So it's not just a translation of your website. Again, words matter. Mm-hmm. Arabic is a very rich and poetic language. And so having the right copywriters that are not only translating it from a technical perspective, but also from a storytelling perspective. So it's very important to have the right kind of skill set on your team that's going to help you communicate to this target population. And yes, English, I would say, generally, especially in the big cities, it's not a barrier. You will find a lot of people that speak English. It is the second language that's taught in schools. But like you said, I don't think you should make an assumption that everybody's going to speak it or speak it fluently so that you can do your marketing material in English. So yes, you need to go to Arabic and do have an Arabic first approach when you're doing your communications and marketing in the region.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to social media specifically, which platforms would you say that are the most prolific in Saudi Arabia right now, so that people listening can actually, try to figure out their strategy a little bit as well based on that?
It depends on your target population. So I think one of the first things that any company brand needs to do is identify who their target population segments are. There is, for example, a certain demographic where the platform X is going to be their priority. And then you're going to have a different demographic where, and it depends, if you're a consumer brand, then you're going to have, for example, Instagram or TikTok. If it's more services organization, then it's going to be LinkedIn. Podcasts are very popular here in the region, especially in Riyadh with the long commutes. People utilize their time in the car by listening to podcasts. But it really depends on who you are, who your target population is, and what service or product that you're providing. So it's not an easy question to answer, but there needs to be some understanding and some analysis happening in the background before you can identify where to focus your energy in.
Interesting. And since we are on the social media topic, I'm quite curious to know your opinion about personal brand. And now everybody's having their own personal brand. There is a huge popularity on TikTok, and people start to make businesses and money out of TikTok. I think we can all agree LinkedIn is becoming next Instagram, where people are sharing a lot of personal stories. What do you think? Where is it coming from? What's your opinion on this? How will it develop?
And is it also happening in Saudi as much as it's happening?
100%. So personal brand is one of your most valuable assets, I think. And your personal brand starts when you walk into a room. So it starts with how you represent yourself, how you carry yourself, even your body language, your tone of voice, the words that you use. So that is all part of an individual's personal brand, even before you start thinking about the business, because your personal brand translates into the business, and a business is a manifestation of the founders and the creators of the brand. Definitely the stories that you tell on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, TikTok, or Instagram, they do matter. But I think one of the key elements that one needs to be top of mind is authenticity, consistency, and just narrating a story, having a story to tell. We all do have stories to tell, but the thing is about how do you tell the story, and what story do you want to tell? I think that's all the combination of personal brand.
What's interesting in Saudi is that I think there's, culturally speaking, like this association of power, or just modesty, this modesty that, or power that comes from modesty, and
yes,
like actually hiding your privacy, and that is actually seen as you're keeping yourself to yourself, and so you're not really exposing a lot of information about yourself. So especially for women, for example, where you're not really photographing each other, or you're not doing things like you would maybe in other cultures. So how do influencers, or how does the Saudi society actually how do they interpret that almost exhibitionist almost exhibitionist culture within social media, where suddenly you're documenting every single moment of your life, and you're just posting everything on social media? And how does that actually clash with this, culture, or does it even clash with the culture of, keeping yourself to yourself?
I think this is very similar. So whether it's a person or a company, and it's about reaching that balance, about not communicating too much and not communicating enough. So I think it's applicable to both. What you talked about in regards to power and modesty, I think the balance is more about being humble. One of the great values that's much appreciated in this culture is the value of being humble. So even when you are powerful, you don't want to be that value of I'm the biggest, I'm the greatest, I'm the first, that is not. There are some times when that is valued, but I think that there's a general appreciation for a brand or a person presenting themselves as being humble. Modesty is, again, the same thing. It depends on what your boundaries are and respecting your own personal boundaries. So before going on social media, identifying where your boundaries are, what part of your life you want to keep private, and what part of your life do you want to share. And the audience doesn't expect you, or doesn't necessarily want everything. It depends on your content and what you're positioning yourself as. They might be curious, they might be hungry for more, but that doesn't mean that you need to oblige them and do that. So understanding where your boundaries are and sticking to that and being consistent with it is very important, even for your own balance with your own self, and being at peace with yourself, because you need to respect your own boundaries, even to yourself, before it is your relationship with the audience that's on the other side of the screen.
It's really interesting because, especially here, we're dealing with a very young population that is really kind of well-traveled, well-educated, but still, they are very true to those, cultural traits that you described. So I think it's really something that a company, even wanting to enter this market, needs to understand properly and carefully balance.
Correct.
How that message is spread, how is it distributed, what is the message, what is the story. So yeah, having an advisor like yourself would be, absolutely necessary for any kind of market entry here. Now, thinking about, Vision 2030, that chapter is coming slowly but surely to an end, but we're now thinking about Vision 2040. And now there's, a lot of talks about what is actually Vision 2040 going to involve. So you've been obviously, a very active participant of this whole transformation. What do you think is going to be revealed in Vision 2040, and what do you wish is going to be revealed there?
Definitely, from my experience of living here, I think that there's going to be a lot of consistency. Mm-hmm. So it is what we've been doing so far, we've been doing very well, but more and bigger. So the focus on, for example, tourism, the focus on culture, the focus on diversifying manufacturing businesses that are happening in Saudi Arabia, creating jobs, diversifying away from traditional or conventional sources of GDP income. That is still going to be going forward even past 2030. This is, my prediction. One thing that so the vision was launched back in 2017, and so we're 9 years into it. And one of the things that we've seen throughout this time is the consistency in that vision being communicated and being executed. So that is going to continue even beyond 2030. It's not going to end. There is no expiration date. But what's going to happen is that it's going to get bigger and better. And what's going to happen is a reevaluation, just like any corporate brand, any government strategy, any personal brand. What you do is you take a moment, you sit back, you evaluate, and then if there are things that need to be recalibrated, you do that. And we've seen that in the past year. And then you move forward. So I still see a lot of what we're doing now is going to continue.
Wonderful. And people who will be driving Vision 2040, I think those would be the people who are graduating right now.
Yep.
So maybe we'll go to this section where we ask our participants to give advice to their younger self. And if you would be graduating university now, knowing what you already know and knowing so much about Saudi and the vision, what would be your decision in terms of career, your opportunities, your way forward? What kind of advice can you give?
Definitely, the first thing is to know that you're very lucky. I mean, I was lucky. You were lucky. We're all lucky. But luck is what we make out of it. So the first thing that they need to do is come to terms that they are lucky and they're in an amazing time of the world. With AI, with technology that is happening. Yes, there are challenges, but what time has passed where there weren't any challenges? Challenges are what make us grow. We all experienced the pandemic, and initially we all thought that this was a horrible thing. And yes, there were a lot of negative sides to it. It was very horrible, but there were a lot of positives to it. Remote work, the flexibility, the ability that we're not limited to a physical space. We can function, we can be productive outside of that. Plus a lot of other things, of course, being, more emergency preparedness and there's a lot of things, positive things. And similar to the times now. So someone graduating now could see the glass half full or half empty. The half empty would be, oh my gosh, AI and the challenge of AI, and I'm not going to have a job. AI is going to replace me. But actually, you are a tech native. You grew up with AI. You went to university. You wrote papers with AI available. So you are very savvy in it. So the learning curve for the more experienced generations is going to be more of a difficult curve or a longer curve for them. Whereas for the tech savvy generation that's graduating now, the tech natives, for them, they're the experts. They're the subject matter experts. Grab this opportunity and move forward. Be curious, ask questions, and also understand that you have something to learn from people that have experience as well. So look for a mentor, look for a sponsor, and those are two very different things, and try to learn from them. And you've got an amazing, bright future ahead of you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you think we will see more younger people going into entrepreneurship?
Oh,
instead of corporates?
Of course,
that's the future.
Of course, yes. It's a very fertile environment for small and medium enterprises. Now is the time to be an entrepreneur.
And what's the ecosystem here in Saudi from your perspective in terms of entrepreneurship, starting your own business? Is it easy? Is it more difficult?
I think that Saudi has always been a country for entrepreneurs. And, you see the successful names, the Saudi successful names that are in the market now that have started banks, that have started manufacturing industries, all of it. They had opportunities, and what distinguished them from others is being able to think outside of the box. That is still available now, but what we have now is more of a structured ecosystem. So you now have startups, you have incubators, whereas, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, those things didn't exist, and you had to mainly go at it on your own and try things on your own. But now there's a lot of role models. And then, of course, we've got the amazing tool of the internet where you can not only learn from your local ecosystem, but you can learn from an international ecosystem. So you can see, for example, someone in Moldova, what did they do? Or someone in South Africa, what have they done? And how they took advantage and thought outside of the box. and utilize the ecosystem that's here, such as this wonderful facility that you have.
Rusha, thank you so much. And what can we wish you personally or in your career now for the next upcoming years in this case?
I think it would be for me to continue to stay curious. That has served me well in the past. I have always not been afraid of asking why or how, or not being afraid to ask anyone in power, like, can you explain that to me, or can you tell me more? It has served me well, and I think that if I were to wish something for myself is to continue to be curious.
Thank you so much. We're wishing you all of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing these insights. It was absolutely phenomenal. And for all of those of you watching us today, you can definitely reach out to Rusha through LinkedIn. I guess will be a great support for any company joining this ecosystem in Saudi Arabia, sharing insights, absolutely incredible insights on how to actually conduct your communication strategy in Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.